an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Red Rising Book 3, Morning Star, chapters 35 through 38, The Light, Swill, The Last Eagle, and The Bill. In these chapters, so Cassius has some information, and there's a lot of people who don't trust him. And it's always funny because I just take people at their word in these books sometimes, and it's not until someone says, well, what if they're lying, that it even enters my mind that maybe they're lying. I just believed him. I still do. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Sefi The Quiet for commissioning this episode. Sefi, you know who you are. Appreciate you. These chapters are really interesting for me because of the fact that there is so much more conversation happening, and there is such an emphasis on deciding who we can trust, like what kind of methods we're going to use. Torture comes up a lot. And I am just really, the thing that keeps hitting me, and this sort of ties into what I said in the intro, I just take it for granted that we can trust Mustang. And I have to remind myself why people are understandably side-eyeing her in the midst of all of this. There are times where I get frustrated because I just want to be like, come on, dudes, can we just get past this? And then I have to sort of remind myself like, hey, maybe I shouldn't be trusting her so easily. But truth be told, I can tell myself that and know that intellectually I probably shouldn't do it so easily. But I just do, though. I just actually think it's fine that she is on our side. I'm not trying to say that I believe she follows Darrow without thought, because, like, as we saw in the situation with Ragnar's mother, she was clearly, like, not in agreement with Darrow and kind of watching for the way that he played the situation, because she is still deciding whether he is somebody worth following and whether he is adaptable and all of this. So I do think that if he were to make a couple moves in a row that she didn't agree with, she would be off on her own, doing her own thing. But I believe as of right now that she is fully on board, and it's sort of frustrating how often people are bringing up not only whether they could trust her, whether to talk about things in front of her, but I just sort of feel like at this point she is so embedded in everything that if you don't trust her by now, if you don't trust her by now, but no, for real though, like, what else does she have to do? She could have, and she says this eventually, like, she could have fucked you guys over 10 times by now, and she just hasn't. And maybe you could say, oh, she's biding her time, but for what? Like, for what reason would she wait to fuck you all over? That doesn't really make sense, you know? So I just am eager to get to a point where it's just, let's get past this. And I really do appreciate, I know I'm jumping ahead talking about this, but I do appreciate that in the scenario where everybody is sort of like saying, I don't feel comfortable with her being part of this, what reason should we trust her, that Darrow is sort of smirking to himself because he can see from the way everybody is turning and looking at him that they are fully expecting him to be the one to defend her. And he is just like, kiddos, oh God, that is not how this is about to go. You are so wrong about it. And indeed, it is her standing up for herself and being like, okay, but who the fuck do you think I is, though? And I love that for her. I just really enjoy it anytime people assume Darrow is going to be Mustang's keeper somehow. And they get set straight on that. Because that's just frustrating. Again, I'm using that word a lot. I'm sorry. But that they assume that. And it's them doing the same thing that Darrow does to Mustang. Underestimating her and not really giving her the respect that she is due. And in my opinion has earned at this point, I would think. But anyway, chapter 35. I love this. For 7 days after the death of Ragnar, I travel across the ice with Sefi, speaking to the male tribes of the Broken Spine, to the blooded braves of the North Coast, to women who wear the horns of rams and stand watch over the Witch Pass. Flying in grav boots beside the Valkyrie, we come bringing the news of the fall of Asgard. It is... dramatic. Yeah, I have to assume. This is not, like, delivering this kind of news, this is bonkers. Imagine if we had this sort of setup on Earth where we thought, like, the gods lived among us, really believed that, and that they came down and, like, took our people sometimes, and then you tell them, like, oh, those are just regular people, they were using you as slaves, and all of that is bullshit. Like, there's nothing to even compare it to, because we have such a distant relationship with our gods, like, the assuming they have never been in contact with us directly. So it's really difficult to even, like, imagine this situation. But the way that people react to this news it's varied. We take the lion's share of Obsidian leaders to the conquered mountain and let them walk the halls where their gods ate and slept, and show them the cold, preserved corpses of the slain golds. In seeing their gods slain, most, even those who knew tacitly of their true condition as slaves, accepted our olive branch. Those who did not, who denounced us, were overcome by their own people. 2 war chiefs hurled themselves from the mountain in shame. Another opened her veins with a dagger and bleeds out on the floor of the greenhouses. And one, a particularly psychotic little woman, watched with great malevolence as we took her to the mountain's data hub, where 3 greens informed her of a planned coup against her rule, showing her video of the conspiracy. We loaned her a razor, a flight back home, and 2 days later, she added 20,000 warriors to my cause. I just really want to know whether or not she was somebody that deserved to be turned on. I'm just asking whether or not you just kept a shit person in power so that you could have the soldiers, and, like, I understand that that's a necessary tactic right now, and maybe the welfare of that little clan isn't really high up on your list of priorities, and I don't really even fault you for that. I am just curious about it, mostly because he called her a psychotic little woman. So that's where I'm kind of, sort of just thinking about it. It is my legend that begins to bind them, not their sense of kinship with one another. These clans have warred for generations. But I have no sordid history here. Unlike Sefi or the other great Obsidian warlords, I am their untouched field of snow, their blank slate on which they can project whatever disparate dreams they have. As Mustang says, I am something new, and in this old world steeped in legends, ancestors, and what came before, something new is very special. And I just really liked this because I feel like if you were trying to write this in a particularly simplistic way, and you didn't want to deal with the inconvenience of it, you could have it be that these clans all sort of come together and make it that the Obsidians are a united front, and have them be a monolith. And instead having them remain mistrustful of one another as ever, because it's very difficult to sort of overcome that kind of division, but have it be Darrow that they're looking to now. That makes a ton of sense. If you are steeped in the tradition of revering gods, and a dude like this shows up, he may be telling you that he's not actually a god, but I have my bets on 100 years from now how much like a god they will pretend he is. You know what I'm saying? So the clans have accepted my invitation for relocation. Hundreds of thousands of them must be brought from their homes in the Antarctic to the tunnels of the Reds, so they are beyond the reach of gold bombardment, which will come when the Golds discover what has transpired here. All this while keeping the Jackal dumb and blind to our maneuvers. From Asgard, Mustang has led the counterintelligence efforts with the help of Quicksilver's hackers to mask our presence and project reports consistent with those filed in previous weeks to the Board of Quality Control HQ in Aegea. With no way to move them without someone noticing, Mustang, a gold aristocrat, has conceived the most audacious plan in the history of the Sons of Ares. One massive troop movement, utilizing thousands of shuttles and freighters from Quicksilver's mercantile fleet and the Sons of Ares Navy to move the population of the pole in 12 hours. 1,000 ships skimming over the southern sea, burning helium to set down on the ice before obsidian cities and lower their ramps to hundreds and thousands of giants swaddled in fur and iron who will fill their hulls with the old, the sick, the warriors, the children, and the fetid stink of animals. Then, under the cover of the Sons of Ares ships, the population will be dispersed underground, and many of the warriors to our military ships in orbit. I do not think I know another person in the world who can organize it as fast as she does. And I am just loving this because and this comes up a little bit later as well. I'm not going to get into the whole thing about like leaving Mars yet, but it never occurred to me that they would have to just evacuate the planet. And of course they do. The planet, like the Golds literally have designed so much of it to keep them in line. I wouldn't be surprised if they had all sorts of fail-safes in place, because these are the only color that represented any sort of threat to them. So I'm sure that they have got some shit in place for if it seems as if they are beginning to get out of pocket again, so that we can settle that shit and get them back into their place. But yeah, the fact that I hadn't thought of that, I really hadn't. So we go into the arrival at Tinos, and understandably, a lot of people are not happy about this because the situation is already really not great for the people living here. We haven't got enough resources. We haven't got enough space, enough food. And now you're going to pull in all of these obsidians who are seen as barbarians by a lot of these other people. And it's just seeming like a powder keg, you know? And I love Severo coming up because I was really worried about whether he would blame Darrow for Ragnar's death. And it doesn't seem like he does. Maybe he does in a way, and he's just sort of keeping that to himself. But as of right now, he seems to see it as the fault of Cassius and Aja. So he comes up to Sefi, and he produces this giant bear cloak that Ragnar used to wear, and says he wore this to battle. With your permission, I'd like him to wear it now. I was very surprised. I kind of thought he was going to offer it to her. I think that my feeling has always been sort of like, when I have something that meant a lot to a person, that I would rather it be handed on to mean something to someone else rather than what he wants is to have it buried with Ragnar. And that's not an unusual preference. A lot of people are like, have somebody dressed in clothes that they love or put things in their coffin that meant a lot to them. But that is just not really how things work for me usually. And I just really kind of wish that it would still be out and repping for Ragnar in a way and be like a connection for his sister. But, what can you do? You are brother to Ragnar, you are brother to me, Sefi says. She clicks her tongue and her Valkyrie pass stewardship of her brother's body to Sevro. Mustang glances my way. Sefi's generosity strikes me as a promising sign. If she were a covetous creature, she would have kept his body in her lands and given him an obsidian funeral pyre before burying his ashes in the ice. Instead, she told me she knows where his true home lies, with those who fought beside him, who helped him come back to his people. And I really love that, These are the people who knew him best and had his back and freed him. Her mother knew and still sent him into slavery. I can understand feeling like that wasn't home for him, So they have Cassius to take care of, and they're putting him someplace that's going to be like he has to be with everybody. And later on, Darrow can't help but laugh at the fact that Dancer has been very firm in making sure he doesn't get special treatment. But he has to be kept from, because there are plenty of people who are going to have a grudge against him and try and take him out. And then we have the scene with Sevro. And they just sit in silence as Sevro is looking at the body and really just adjusting to the fact that Ragnar's really gone. And they both are struggling with this. I'm glad the amount of time we spend brooding on him, because I just am not over it that he's gone. It's such a bummer. And, he was such a huge presence, like literally and figuratively. He wanted to go to Venus, he murmurs, voice soft as a child's. I showed him one of the holovids of a catamaran there. Second he put the goggles on, I'd never seen anyone smile like that, like he'd found heaven and realized he didn't have to die to go there. He'd sneak in and borrow my holo gear in the middle of the night, till one day I just gave him the damn thing. Things are 400 credits max. You know what he did to repay me? Sevro holds his right hand to show me his skull tattoo. He made me his brother. But the big fat idiot had to run in at Aja instead of away from her. It was my fault. My shit plan to take Aja out. She killed Quinn, helped kill my father, killed dozens of us when you were locked up. Wasn't your bad. You'd have lost me too if I were there. Even Rags couldn't have kept me from having a go at her. Always trying to protect us. The Shield of Tinos. He loved the name. I think he'd always thought himself a blade before he met us. We let him be what he wanted. A protector. You guys, that got me so bad. It really did. Like the idea of him considering himself a blade and them calling him a shield. Right in the heart. Right in the heart. Oh, God. So then they talk about, why are you keeping Cassius alive? And I was genuinely shocked at the fact that Darrow is willing, even after Sevro says he killed my father, to say, maybe I think the world would be a better place with him in it. I didn't think that he was going to say it. And, I appreciate that this is here, despite the fact that Darrow would have been willing for Sefi to kill Cassius at the moment of the death of Ragnar. Like, both of these things can be true. You can have the rage that you would have been fine with somebody being killed, and later on you can feel like, that was my rage and my grief. That's not necessarily what I feel is best. Because Darrow just, he cares about Cassius, and later on admits how much he wants Cassius's approval. Like, he respects him still, even in the midst of all of this garbage. So many people have used him, lied to him, betrayed him. All that's defined him. It's not fair. I want him to have a chance to decide for himself what kind of person he wants to be. None of us gets what we want to be, Severo mutters, at least not for long. Isn't that why we fight? Isn't that what you just said about Ragnar? He was made a blade, but we gave him a chance to be a shield. Cassius deserves that same chance. Shithead. Just because you're right doesn't mean you're right. Anyway, eagles are hated as much as lions. Someone here is still going to try to pop him. And your girl, too. She's got the pit vipers with her, and she's not my girl. Whatever you say. Wish she'd taken the Telemonuses with her. If she had, you'd have slagged Azure hard. The fact that Darrow is still trying to say she's not my girl. Darrow, can we get real? Can you just please stop? For the sake of us all. You do not need to be denying this right now. Get the hell out of here. I mean, come on. So yeah, Severo reports on the ships that he has gotten for the cause for Darrow, and Darrow is just like having a moment of real gratitude for Severo and knowing how he depends on him and the fact that he got shit done here. The Jackal won't let us have the moon. He might not care about its people, but he can't destroy the station's helium refinery, so another assault will come soon. It won't affect my war effort, but the Jackal will get tied down fighting the populace that we've woken. It'll drain his resources without trapping me. Worst possible situation for him. What are you thinking? I ask Severo. I'm wondering how long till it's us on the slab. And wondering why it's got to be us on the line. You see vids and hear stories, and you think of the regular people, the ones who get a chance at life on Ganymede or Earth or Luna. Can't help but be jealous. And he talks about maybe having a house and kids. Never thought of it till Pops died. Till they took you. And Darrow says, till you met Victra, you mean. Nice goatee, by the way. Shut up, he says. Have you two? He cuts me off, changing the subject. But it'd be nice to just be Severo. To have Pops. To have known my mother. Sometimes I think about going back to the beginning and wondering what would have happened if Pops had known the board was coming. If he'd escaped with my mother. With me. And they both have this, moment, and I appreciate Darrow talking again about Io and how she, the way that probably if Io hadn't sacrificed herself, she would have grown really resentful of their life, and he would have liked it, but they wouldn't have seen eye to eye and how he turned her into somebody else in his memory. And I did all of this thinking that it was for her, but that wasn't it. She wouldn't have wanted me to make her into this martyr, this perfect person. And she would have wanted me to do this because I believed in it, not out of dedication to her, being like, well, this is what she died for. If I didn't feel it, it wouldn't matter. We're not fighting for the dead. We're fighting for the living. For a chance to have children, that's what has to come after this. Otherwise, what's the point? You and I keep looking for light in the darkness, expecting it to appear, but it already has. I touch his shoulder. We're it, boyo. Broken and cracked and stupid as we are, we're the light, and we're spreading. And I loved it. Corny, don't care. Loved it. 36, Swill. We have a little combo with Victra, and she saunters off with Severo, and they are definitely hooking up. He goes to see Mustang, who is in the commissary, and they're telling stories. This whole thing is just delightful. Cavax is such a precious angel. Ugh, God. He is almost giving like he used to be Ragnar when he was younger kind of energy, you know? He's a little bit too sedate at this point, but definitely still has the heart. Just, I get the feeling that his body isn't up for it anymore. But yeah, this conversation is lovely. So they're telling stories, and Mustang is saying, I was just getting to the part where you wrestled packs in the mud. My mother watches me quietly, a little smile on her lips as she knows the panic that must be going through me right now. Too shocked at seeing two halves of my life collide without my supervision, I sit down uneasily and listen to Mustang finish the story. With all that's transpired, I'd forgotten the charm of this woman. Her easy, light nature. How she draws others in by making them feel important, by saying their names and letting them feel seen. She holds my uncle and brother in a spell, one reinforced by the Telemonis's admiration for her. I try not to blush when my mother catches me admiring Mustang. His mom knows what's up. Absolutely. Like, yeah. He has a type, for sure. And eventually they're like, what's another story about Darrow? And his mother tells a story basically about how he hawked his most prized possession to get medicine for his father. I think his father. Kieran. For Kieran, my bad. His father was already dead by the time he did this, and that was why it was his prized possession, because it had been his dad's. And then she's like, all right, it's time for bed. And she leads everybody away, and it feels very much like she's like purposely giving time to him, And they have a bit of him and Mustang, a conversation about how nice it is to be meeting his family in this context versus the way he tried to have it set up before. So the meeting with Dancer didn't go well. I fear not, Daxo says. The resentment he harbors runs deep. Theodora was more forthcoming, but Dancer was intransigent. Militantly so. So you want to build a world for them, says Mustang. For your mother, for Kieran's children, I understand that. When I chose to negotiate with the Sovereign, I was trying to do the same thing. Protecting those I love. I couldn't see a world without war unless we capitulated, but I can see one now. You really mean that? All of you? Family is all that matters, Kavak says, and you are family, aren't you? Yes. I nod gratefully. I am. And, I wasn't sure if he would say it or if he would have to think about it, but it doesn't seem like he really has to, It seems like he's just acknowledging a truth. There is a matter of concern. It's your plan. Your design to use claw drills to allow obsidians to invade key cities around Mars. We think it is a mistake. Really? Why? Father and I do not have the same faith in the obsidians you seem to have. Your intentions will matter little if you let them loose on the populace of Mars. And this was an interesting conversation here. Daxo is basically telling, and this is a point that I hadn't really considered, but he's telling Darrow, you are projecting your memory of who Ragnar was and his judgment and his heart onto all obsidians. And you have to know they aren't all going to be like him. They call them barbarians several times, and they point out the way that Sefi treated the gold prisoners and the fact that she, cut their heads off so brutally, cut one woman's tongue out, and they're just like, dude, we can't join forces to a plan that would unleash obsidians on the cities of Mars, and the Arcos women won't either. We don't really deal with that issue right now, because Mustang comes in with her other reason why she thinks the plan is flawed, which I think is holds more water. I think that the Telemonises are correct about the Arcos women. I think that possibly they are correct about the Obsidians in general. I don't want to say that they're all barbarians, but I do think that maybe most of them have been trained to be as brutal as possible, and that is going to be a difficult thing to curb. But it's also definitely rooted in some colorism, racism. I'm not even sure what to color it. Mustang's point, though, for me, really clicked. And basically, she tells the story first about how when she was little, the Jackal used to create mazes and ask her to find the center of the maze. And when she did, he would play it off and laugh and be like, oh, you're real good at this, huh? But then one time, after she had gotten it correct, she saw him alone in his room, shrieking and hitting himself in the face because he lost to her. The next time he asked me to find the center of a maze, I pretended I couldn't, but he wasn't fooled. It was like he knew I'd seen him in his room. Not the introverted but pleasant, frail boy everyone else saw. The real him. He made me finish the maze, and when I did, he smiled, said how clever I was, and walked off. The next time he drew a maze, I couldn't find the center, no matter how hard I tried. He just watched me try from the floor among his pencils, like an old evil ghost inside a little porcelain doll. That's how I remember him. It's how I see him now when I think about him killing Father. He'll never forgive you for beating him at the Institute, for making him cut off his hand. He'll never forgive me for stripping him naked and delivering him to you. We are his obsession. Just as much as Octavia is, as much as Father was. So if you think he's going to just forget how Severa waltzed into his citadel with a claw drill and stole you out from under him, you're going to get a lot of people killed. Your plan to take the cities won't work. He'll see it coming a kilometer off. And even if he doesn't, if we take Mars, this war will last for years. We need to go to the jugular. And not just that, Daxo says, we need assurances you're not aiming to begin a dictatorship or a full-on democracy in the case of victory. A dictatorship? I ask with a smirk. You really think I want to rule? Daxo shrugs. Someone must. A woman clears her throat at the door. We wheel around to see Holiday standing there with her thumbs in her belt loops. Sorry to interrupt, sir, but the Bellona is asking for you. It seems rather important. So, this conversation and the way that she describes the Jackal, I wish that we I think a lot of us knew this about him in a general way, but there's something specific about this story that feels like new information. I love especially the fact that he was aware how he had to project a type of persona, and letting it slip in front of her was a bit of a fuck up. I find it really fascinating that he seems to have almost built this expectation of like, if I beat her, then I will be the best and then Father will love me. And he doesn't obviously have a father anymore, but that doesn't stop you from trying to get approval from somebody just because they died. Like, trust me, I know. And the idea that he is obsessed with them because of them having beaten him before, wanting to get the best of them, that actually makes him keeping Darrow alive the way that he did make more sense, in a way that I was willing to overlook the way he kept Darrow alive simply because you need Darrow for the narrative. You know, we're going to write a story where he's tortured but alive, of course, because he needs to go back out there. But if I knew this before, him keeping Darrow as a sort of trophy to prove I got the better of you finally, I feel like I would have accepted it at the time a lot more as a character thing than as a narrative necessity, if that makes sense. It doesn't really matter in the end. Like, in retrospect works as well, you know, but I really, really felt like this changed a little bit the way I understood his personality to work. Because there is a difference between a villain who just wants to achieve a certain objective and a villain who wants to achieve a certain objective to make a particular point. Like, it's about his ego with him more than I was thinking. Really, you know? So, let's go to Cassius. You all know that I was already surprised he was still alive. But it turns out that he can talk. The arrow missed his voice box. And the conversation, first of all, he hasn't been given painkillers. He says there wasn't enough to go around. The patients voted last week to give the hard meds to burn victims and amputees. I always wondered if mothers can hear their children weeping for them. Can yours? I didn't weep, and I don't think my mother cares much for anything other than revenge, whatever that means at this point. Was it her or was it you? What do you mean? I thought for sure he was asking who shot me, and then I was like, there's no way he doesn't remember that it was Mustang. And he then says, who kept the obsidians from boiling out my eyes and taking my tongue? You or Virginia? It was both of us. Liar. Didn't think she'd shoot, to tell the truth of it. Don't suppose you could take these off. It's dreadful when you've got an itch. And he's pointing at his manacles. I just want to point out again how much Virginia keeps being underestimated. The fact that she didn't think that she would shoot him. I know that it's possibly just because he felt, I think she cares about me, blah, blah, blah. But let's be honest. There is an element in there of, like, thinking she's softer than they are. I could have taken the shot, but she couldn't. I don't know if he thinks he could have taken the shot, honestly. I'm not sure about that. But the fact that he just really didn't think she could irritates me. There's just something about it. It's like heartbreaking, but also annoying. So there's a back and forth about the Sovereign and why he works for her. He says duty, but it doesn't feel like he really believes that. And finally, he decides to tell Darrow, and I believed him. Later on, when everybody argues about whether to believe this or not, I was just like, come on, guys. There's something about Cassius that for me, in the end, is almost always going to boil down to him doing the right thing with the information that he has. I still, and I know that this is not important, but I still really think often about the fact that he accused Darrow of doing something to the children that Darrow, we know, didn't do. I'm assuming that the Jackal did. So I want that to get cleared up in particular, because that seemed to be something that really changed the way Cassius saw Darrow. And I want that to get straightened out. But I don't know if that's ever going to even come up. Who knows? Anyway, he basically is like, why do you think the Sovereign was even willing to meet with Mustang? Like, she knew that they were on a losing streak and she was about to show leniency. So why would she compromise? And Darrow's like, well, she wants to replace the Jackal. So, she can't deal with him while she's trying to handle Mustang. And he's like, yeah. Okay, so she wanted to remove him. Do you know why? And Darrow's like, a million reasons. And he lists them off. And Cassius says, okay, all of that sounds correct. And they were the reasons that we told to Mustang. But we noticed that the numbers on helium production were kind of being fucked up. He reported losses that weren't there. And I immediately was like, oh shit. I was genuinely surprised Darrow wasn't getting it, because Darrow thinks he's skimming off the top for money. Like, he thinks it's just the money. He's selling it. He's doing whatever. And then Cassius brings him back. I'm like thinking to myself, Darrow, you are thinking way too small, dude. Like, instantly, I'm like, oh God, I see what he's doing. And I feel like I understand that we have to have Darrow not fully getting it so that Cassius can explain for the reader. But I really believe Darrow, after the story that she had told about the Jackal, that he should have gotten what was being said here. He's not reselling it. He's creating artificial shortages while he stockpiles. At this rate, in 2 years, he'll have more than the Imperial reserves on Luna and Venus and the War Reserve on Ceres combined. So he's making a play for Sovereign, buying senators? 40 so far, Cassius admits. More than we thought he had, but there's another kink which he's involved them in. I'm going to ask you a question, and I need you to tell me the truth. Did the Sons of Ares rob a deep space asteroid warehouse in March, several days after your escape about 4 months ago? Be more specific. So he does. No, there were no operations there that I know of. And he's like, fuck. And Darrow's like, okay, so what was in the warehouse? 500 nuclear warheads. 500. What was their yield? 30 megatons each. World killers. Cassius, why would they even exist? In case the Ash Lord ever has to repeat Rhea. And this is when Darrow's like, what the fuck, Cassius? She's out here stockpiling to destroy planets just in case. And you're serving this person? What the fuck? And Cassius just doesn't even address that. All evidence pointed to Ares, but the Sovereign thought it gave Severo too much credit. She had Moira investigate it personally, and she was able to trace the tags of the hijacker ships to a defunct shipping line formerly owned by Julii Industries. If the Sons truly didn't steal them, then the Jackal has the weapons, but we don't know what he's doing with them. If this is true, why would you tell me? Because Mars is my home too, Darrow. My family's been there as long as yours. My mother is still there, in our home. Whatever the Jackal's long-term strategy is, the judgment of the Sovereign is that he will use the weapons if his back is to the wall. You're afraid we might win. When it was Severos' war, no. The Sons of Ares was doomed. But now, look what's happening. We've lost containment. Octavia doesn't know where I am, whether or not Aja is still alive. She has no eyes on this. The Jackal might know she tried to betray him to his sister. He's a wild dog. If you provoke him, he will bite. You might be able to survive that, Darrow. But can Mars? So, chapter 38 is him reporting all of this back to his people, and a lot of folks saying that it's bullshit. Holiday First is the one to be like, nah, he's lying. And I love Victor saying, let's leave the deductions to the individuals who have actually met the man, shall we? Adrius doesn't function like a normal human. Amen, sister. That is an understatement. And Dancer's like, yeah, but it is a question, like, if he has them, why not use them? And Darrow says, because escalating like that this early, it'll fuck him just as much as us. And the Sovereign will have a reason overtly to replace him. And it'll turn into like a whole other type of war. Quicksilver is certain that he doesn't have them because he doesn't have any record of any whisper of something like this. But I am of the opinion that if he was in partnership with the Jackal and he was fucking over the Jackal and he wasn't aware, there's no reason the Jackal can't have been fucking him over without him being aware. It just follows, you know, it just makes sense. And Severo at this point is like, well, maybe we could torture him. And I was just, again, just kind of fucked by the fact that he is so easily able to talk about this. I love Severo so much, you guys, and I just keep having trouble with the fact that he is okay with torture. That he, if anything, there's an eagerness to him about it that bothers me. And I know that about him, but I keep making myself sort of forget on purpose. And then he reminds me in no uncertain terms, and I can't ignore it, and it makes me really, really uncomfortable. It's just, you know, Again, Victor brings up Mustang being here, and they have to have this talk about her. She's working with us. For now, maybe she wants us to eliminate her enemies, place herself in a position of power. Maybe she wants Mars. Maybe she wants more. I hate to agree with the Julie Eye, Dancer says, but she's right in this. They expect me to defend Mustang, which shows how little they know her. You are all being rather illogical, Mustang says. If I meant you ill, I would have hailed the Sovereign or my brother and brought a tracking device on my ship. You know what lengths she would go to in order to find Tinos. But I didn't. I know you will not trust me, but you trust Darrow, and he trusts me. And since he knows me better than any of you do, I think he's in the best position to make the call. So stop whimpering like gory damn children and let's be about the task. Adore her. Amen, sister. Absolutely. Do you trust him and he trusts me? Then shut up. Stop it. End of story. And it really does seem like that kind of ends the conversation. Like they move on. You know, and I just respect the shit out of that. So, finally, Dancer says, because Severo keeps being like, let me go fucking torture him. Dancer's like, shut the fuck up about it. Men will say anything to get torture to stop. It doesn't work. We don't torture, that's final. Oh yeah, right. We're the good guys. Good guys never torture and always win. But how many good guys get their heads put in boxes? How many get to watch their friends' spines cut in half? Quicksilver pops open an oyster. Torture can be effective if done correctly with confirmable information in a narrow scope. Like any tool, it is not a panacea. It must be used properly. Personally, I don't really think we have the luxury of drawing moral lines in the sand. Not today. Let Barca have a go. Pull some nails, some eyes if need be. I agree, Theodora says, surprising the council. What about Mateo? I asked Quicksilver. Severo shattered his face. Quicksilver's knife slips on the new oyster, punching into the meat of his palm. Yeah, how about that, bud? I agree with him, Darrow, Mustang says. We have to be certain he's telling the truth. Otherwise, we're letting him dictate our strategy, which is classic counterintelligence. And then Victra gets up. I should mention, too, after she says, it's classic counterintelligence, it's what you would do. And then the next sentence is, and it's what I tried to do till the torture started with the Jackal. Which indicates to me that's Darrow acknowledging torture does work a little. Like, when he says, until the torture started, I'm assuming he was trying to lie and give fake info, and then the torture started and he began to tell real info. I don't know if maybe it's then I just shut the fuck up, but I don't know. So that's him kind of being like, yeah, it does work. But this is when Victor gets up and she yanks up her shirt and shows them all of the scars on her. I came here because I didn't have a choice. I stayed when I did. Don't make me regret that. It's startling to see the vulnerability in her. I don't think Mustang would ever let her guard down in public like this. Severo stares intensely at the tall woman as she tugs her shirt back on and turns back to the hollow. Can we get a better resolution? She asks as if the matter is settled. And yeah, that was an interesting moment because the fact that they are hooking up and she is very much, we are not torturing. I don't want to fucking be part of that. When Severo is very eager to torture. How does she, get cool with that? With being with somebody willing to do the sorts of things that were done to her? I don't know if I could do that. On the other hand, maybe it makes her feel safe to know that somebody cares about her who has that sort of, viciousness to them. You know? I don't know. But anyway, so there's some talk about whether the Sovereign has ever mentioned anything like this. And Victra is like, yeah, Mother did mention to me how there were little goodie bags that Imperators could collect on the fly. Yeah, if the rim went off the tracks. That matches with what Cassius says. She turns back to us. Then I think Cassius is telling the truth. So do I say to the group. And torturing him doesn't resolve anything. Cut off his fingers one by one, and what if he still says it's true? Do we keep cutting until he says it's not? And I was like, that's a really good point, actually. Like, are you just so sure he's lying that you torture till you get the answer you want? That's always been the point, but the point of, like, opposing torture is that people search for what the person wants from them to give it to them so that they can get them to stop, right? And that's essentially what he's like. How would you even be sure at any point that he was telling the truth, unless you're saying that it would be until he tells you what you want to hear? He wants me to have a holo-conference with the Sovereign to discuss an alliance against the Jackal. They give us intel, we kill him before he can detonate any bombs. That's his plan. And Severo does a whole thing here that I won't get into that is actually funny. The Valkyrie will attend this mission with the Howlers, Sefi says. No, the Jackal will invite a personal attack, I say, glancing at Mustang, who has already warned me off that course. He knows us too well to be surprised by things we've done in the past. I'm not throwing lives away by playing into his understanding of our strengths. Do you have anyone side in his inner circle, Regulus? Dancer asks Quicksilver. Surprisingly, the two men seem to rather like one another. I did, until your Greys broke Darrow out. Adrius had his chief of intelligence purge his inner circle. My men are all dead, or imprisoned, or scared shitless. What do you think, Augustus? Dancer asks Mustang. I think the reason you managed to stay alive so long is because Golds are so consumed with the individual ego that they've forgotten how they conquered Earth. Each thinks they can rule. With Orion returning and Severo's gains, your greatest strength now lies with your navy and an obsidian army. Don't help the Sovereign. She's still the most dangerous enemy. You help her, she focuses on you. Sow more seeds of discord. And I think that makes a lot of sense. That, and just generally keeping her scattered. The only thing my brother ever wanted was my father's approval. He did not get it, so he killed my father. Now he wants Mars. What do you think he'll do if he doesn't get it? I have a new plan, I say. I should bloody damn hope so, Severo mutters to Victra. Do I get to hide inside anything? I'm sure we can find something for you, darling, Victra says. I don't know why, but I just loved that little interaction. Oh, God. It could also be taken as a double entendre, but I don't really think it was. So, this is when Darrow begins to talk about what would happen if they managed to take Mars. He's pointing out that it would be years. And Victra says, well, they'll just keep hitting us or use bombs, which I also believe he'll use on the Obsidians and our army if we go ahead with Operation Rising Tide. We've been preparing the operation for months, Dancer protests. With the Obsidians, it might just work. You want to scrap it? Yes. This planet is why we fight. The strength of rebel armies throughout history is that they have less to protect. They can rove and move and are impossible to pin down. We have so much to lose here, so much to protect. This war won't be won in days or weeks. It will be a decade. Mars will bleed, and at the end ask yourselves, what will we inherit? A corpse of what was once our home. We must fight this war, but I will not fight it here. I propose we leave Mars. And I will be honest, guys, I assumed they would leave Mars. I fully assumed. I never even considered that they would just stay and make this their base of operations, because for me that instantly felt way too dangerous. It didn't even enter my mind. I figured what they were doing with Tinos was temporary until they found a place on another planet that they could move people to. I did not by any means consider this was going to be a permanent arrangement for the entire war. So this, and him bringing this up, I was like, yes, of course. And I was surprised at how much they dig their heels in. But yeah, this is when Dancer starts to be like, well, this war is for Mars. And Darrow is like, no, it's not. It's more than that. And he's like, the point was the Reds spread, and that's how Ares intended it. And Mustang says the war is for everyone. No, Dancer says, this is our war, Gold. I was fighting it where you were still learning how to enslave human beings. And then Severo sees Darrow's face, because he was fucking mid-sentence and they just interrupt basically. And he slams his razor into the tabletop and gets them to shut the fuck up, and then, Reaper, please continue. Thank you, Severo. I won't fall into the trap of the Jackal. The easiest way to lose any war is to let the enemy dictate the terms of engagement. We must do the things that the Jackal and the Sovereign least expect of us. Obviously, yes. 100%. We stay here, that means we are contained. I will not be contained. I transfer the image on my datapad to the table. 63 tiny moons dot the periphery. The 4 great Jovian moons dominate. These 4 largest are referred to collectively as Ilium. Around those moons are 2 of the largest fleets in the solar system, that of the Moon Lords and that of the Sword Armada. Severo looks so pleased he might faint. I'm giving him the war he didn't even know he wanted. Octavia's main fleet, the Sword Armada, is hundreds of millions of kilometers away from its nearest support. Excepting the Scepter Armada around Luna, it is the greatest weapon Octavia has. Octavia sent our good friend Roque Au Fabii to bring the Moon Lords to heel. He has shattered every fleet that has been thrown against them, even with the help of Mustang, the Telemanuses, and the Arcoses. He has beaten the rim down. On board these ships are more than 2 million men and women. More than 10,000 obsidian, 200,000 greys, 3,000 of the greatest killers alive. The greatest golds of their institutes. This fleet has been reinforced by Antonia Au Severus Julii, and it is the instrument of fear by which the Sovereign binds the planet to her will. It has never been defeated. In 40 days, we're going to destroy the Sword Armada and rip the beating heart out of the Society war machine. Now, I'll take your bloody damn questions. And that is the end of the chapter, and I have a lot of them. I really do. I have a lot of questions. How? How are they doing this? What does he plan to do? I'm very excited. And I know that it's probably going to go wrong, but also it probably will go right. You know how that works. I can't wait to see it. I'm also very nervous because it seems like every time we undertake something like this, a person that I really have grown to like dies. And I'm not looking forward to that. I'm at a point now where I'm just like very... Cavax? Don't kill Cavax. Let this man have his peace with his little fox. Let him live his life. So yeah, I really like the fact that Cassius is telling... Okay, you guys, I know that I already talked about this thing with Cassius, and I just want to share my overall feeling on it, because I appreciate the fact that Darrow is willing to admit to himself, I feel an ironclad kinship with this man. Severo asked why I saved him, and I could aspire to notions of valor and honor, but the deep spine response I desperately want him to be a friend again. I crave his approval. Does that make me a fool? Disloyal? Is it the guilt speaking? Is it his magnetism, or is it that vain part of me that just wants to be loved by the people I respect? And I do respect him. He has honor, a corrupted sort, but true honor nonetheless. Or is it sanitary? Which is what you thought before, when it was directed at you in that particular way, but I get it. I am really wondering what's going to happen with Cassius, because I have no doubt, to be perfectly honest, that he has told them the truth. I don't think that this is going to backfire because he gave them bad information, if it backfires at all. I think that he is just as worried about the actual people as Darrow in some ways. So when he sees the way that Darrow is conducting this war, I don't believe anybody is ever going to let Cassius be in the inner circle. I really, really don't believe that. And I don't think he should be, for the record. Personally, as much as I can also like Cassius and also think that he, is doing his best, he is too wrapped up in what golds should be to be trustworthy. He doesn't actually care about equalizing things amongst the glow colors. That's just not a priority for him in the way that it would have to be. But is he somebody who could stand by Darrow again? Not necessarily be inner circle, right-hand man type stuff. But I don't really know how the story progresses with him in the picture as somebody who's sort of weirdly on the outside. If he remains a prisoner like this, something has to change. The status of something has to change to make that work. And Aja is still alive and out there, and I don't know what the fuck is going on with her. Because, we're taking all of our obsidians off the planet. Either Aja finds a way off the planet herself, somehow, because she is resourceful and intelligent. She hides with obsidians and manages to pour into one of the ships and do something from one of the ships full of obsidians that's out there, in disguise. I don't know how they check this sort of thing. Or she's still on the planet, which I don't really know how that could work, because they'd been cut off, but is that still true? Will that be resolved and then she'll be able to get off planet? I feel like Aja is a major factor in whatever happens with Cassius somehow. And I genuinely don't know what to expect. And it's just very worrying for me to know that she's this wild card that's floating out and no doubt will turn up when I least expect her. And I don't like that. So anyway, all right. I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you guys again so much for listening. Thank you to Sefi The Quiet for commissioning this episode. Appreciate you a lot. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.